Absolutely, absolutely. That is absolutely correct. So, so let's continue and keep taking a look at who we actually are, the things that we have accomplished, and who we actually are. So, just give me a minute. I'm just going to share my screen again, and we will just kind of take a walk down an excellent memory lane that counteracts a lot of what has been said already. Okay, so when we look out here, we've just talked about the fact that we had metalworks, long before it was discovered in other places. And then this here also talks about the fact that we had empires, right? We had empires. This was independent empires. We had the Benin Empire, the Kingdom of Nri, the Oyo Empire. We talked about the Borono Empire. Then came the Hausa states, right?
The Korarafa. That was the Korarafa as well. Just
right. Yes, absolutely. There was a Korarafa empire as well. And so we understand that we had independent sovereign nations. So let's talk a little bit about that, because this was back in the day. This is back in the day. And yet today, we keep talking about a one Nigeria that is unitary. When we go back to our history, we're talking about the things that, of who we actually are. So, Dr. Carey, I'll just come to you for a couple of minutes just to talk a little bit about those empires and how they existed.
Yes, it's quite interesting to know that the Oyo, the Benin empires, the Korarafa, and then the other Hausa states were, for example, they were quite independent, they were quite autonomous. They had their military, they had the system of justice that was unique to them. They had democracy. Absolutely. For example, in the best democracy is actually in the Igbo.
In the Igbo culture, right, right.
And to the Middle Belt as well. Yes. Where you didn't have a central government, so there was a system of administration that was free from the manipulations of the Western or the Caliphate, okay, where it's centralized. You had the administration where the matters were adjudicated by the representatives of different villages. Even in the Middle Belt, there was no central government. Okay, so the Oyo had they had more of central government. The House probably had their own central governments, but the Middle Belt and the East had more of a pure democracy. There are historical documents. In fact, one of the documents I found was when I was a visiting lecturer at the University of Hamburg in Germany. I found some documents talking about the sort of legal system of the Middle Belt. Particularly, a professor of mine, a friend of mine, had, since 1963, done some research in the Middle Belt. I had data, complex linguistic historical data that was amazing. So we had kingdoms that had technology, that had system administration, governance that was devoid of, and just to add that bit, women were not oppressed in our system. I don't know if you have heard of what's her name? We had in Zaria, for example, in the Hausaland, we had the Queen Amina.
Queen Amina. Mm-hmm.
She was powerful. Mm-hmm. She was powerful and dealt with the Fulani incursion. Mm-hmm. So women had power. Mm-hmm. Men had their own power. Mm-hmm. Children had so in terms of culture, in terms of education, politics, science and technology was there in the kingdoms, and they were quite self-sufficient.
Right.
So I'll pause from here. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I'll come to Ogaraka next, just to talk a little bit about, we're talking about democracy. And we have said in the past that there is no democracy in Nigeria as is supported by the call for zoning the presidency. if our Constitution was so great, and if unitary, being called one Nigeria, was so fantastic, why are we pleading for zoning? So let's talk about the actual democracy that Dr. Carey talked about that we had in our society long before any Arab came into the area. So just talk to us a little bit about the system of governance in the Igbo culture.
One thing we should know is that before some of these inventions comes in, it was difficult for you to go from, call it one tribe, but one language to the other, because it can penetrate. Yeah. So they were independent. They had their border, and that the language was their border, their culture was their border. And this culture is imbibed in their administrative system, governance system, learning system. In Igbo culture, we used to have what we call folklore, where in the night, the elders will call the children and tell them stories. That was the basic education that we used to have. And honestly, some of the stories I've seen about my people coming from this type of folklores. Okay, you have what is called, when you say egalitarian people, is a place where nobody fears nobody to talk, to some good extent, put it this way. You have a right to express opinion. Yeah, it's a what?
Aristocracy.
Yes, yes. So you get up your opinion, you say, I agree to you, elders, but you still say what you want to say. Yes, that is respect, but there is a freedom of expression. And then, even when the idea of traditional ruler was as well imposed on us, but it never made us a kind of communal people, because in fact, during this last Ohaneze issue, one of the candidates said, what we have is not Ohaneze, but Ohabueze. Because even in Igbo forum, in Igbo forum, it's not a question where you come in because you guys say what you want, even today. Yeah. You see, when the people agree on what you want, what they want to say, then says that you kind of express people's opinion. Yeah. Okay. Either you naturally put it to vote, or you see where the more opinions are coming from, and that becomes the trend. You don't say, people may not be saying that thing, and then they will say something else. So the idea of what do you call it? Civil contribution, civil participation in civil life is part and parcel of Igbo culture. In fact, if I go back to one of the lectures, I hear Joko lecture of Onwe Jogu, then in the past, made very clear that even the origin of the people proper, Keoria for Nkwo, is a kind of democracy where maybe the market days are shared among the communities so that one community doesn't dominate them. Those are part of practical democracies that was even seen then. Okay, so it's something that that has been natural, and even every other attempt have not helped. The idea is that we formed what we call the government today that doesn't represent the realities of the people, unfortunately. Yes. So that's why we are getting it wrong. Thank you.
Right, right, and the important thing about the Igbo democracy is that those who were in charge was from the population. It wasn't like, you had a king and he was lording it over. It was a group of common people. And also that was in all the areas, and they came together to go ahead, Dr. Carey.
No, before he comes, let me say this. Okay. Remember that you cannot, excuse me, even though we try to say the Igbos are from Ngri. Ngri never governed the other Igbos. Right. Remember that.
Right, exactly.
Never go. It's now that one way or the other will try to create closer relationship. And one may say, okay, in terms of history, this but in the actual sense, no, every community are independent. No, we didn't know when other communities were formed. And when you talk of Anambra, Enugu, all this or that, they are completely sort of independent people on themselves. Nobody appoints a king for them. Nobody appoints anything for them as if to say, we are your Lord and this or that. It never happens. Everything is done between the people and then they go their way. Okay, so please, sir.
No, thank you. Very, very, my interest in literature, if you study Chinua Achebe's writing.
Exactly. That's an example that is frequently given, yes.
It gave me, I resonated to it because of my background in the Middle Belt. The Middle Belt, that's exactly how our parents taught us the sort of democracy that you had. Mm-hmm. You had the political arm of government, and you had also the spiritual arm of government. Mm-hmm. You had the elders who came together to constitute, and they were all representing different clans. If my understanding is clear, so the same thing, and so they were, and the youth had their voices. There was the youth. They also have what we call the youth group. Okay.
Yes.
They had a representation.
Absolutely. All the different age groups, in fact.
And the different age groups. Yes. Okay. And the women. Okay. I tell you what. One of the most powerful cults today, permit me to use the word cult, in the Middle Belt. Okay. It's a women's powerful group. Okay, they have their independent group, okay, which both spiritual and political. So every ramification of it, and the good thing I like about the Igbo culture, which I studied a lot, and fortunately I slept around there as well, is the fact that you can rise from a nobody to a somebody.
Yes,
that's
absolutely. But with hard work, absolutely, yes. Absolutely.
Or Congo, for example.
Honest hard work.
Thank you. Work hard, and you can rise from a nobody to a somebody, and that's exactly how democracy allows you to do. A true democracy. And I like what our brother said. He said something about communal living. Yeah, you looked after one another. It's not about but the kind of democracy that was imposed, the caliphate system, for example, in contrast, you have to be a son of a somebody to become a somebody. Right. So the society is stratified, and that's a kind of westernized kind of philosophy as well. Right. The social stratification, the high, the middle, and the low. We didn't have that. You were free to move. There was a free movement, social movement. Okay, in our kind of system, the Western culture brought a clear demarcation between the upper class, the middle class, and the lower class. And so, education is said to be the medium for which you could move, but of course we know politics can push you around and so on. And the worst one is the caliphate system, where it doesn't matter how educated you are, as long as you didn't belong to the royal family, you were a slave. You were not going to be heard. So you see, foreign ideas, both from the West, okay, that allow deliberate stratification of society, and the caliphate that completely dominates, exploits, came together. Now is playing and destroying the true democracy we had historically.
Exactly. And I did want to make one little input into the Western. It's not 3 levels. There is the super aristocratic elite.
Thank you. I'm forgetting.
Before you get to, the rich and the middle and the.
Which is the same thing as the feudalist system of the caliphate.
Yeah, the lords, and the land. I'm just saying. Okay. So let us move on. Let's look some more into history.
Even though this may not be the same in all the Western world, but
true.
Yeah,
but we're talking about the British and et cetera, and America was supposed to be not like that, but tell that to the Rockefellers and to the other elite that we have out there. Let's continue on this journey. Let's look at, this is talking about fossil human skeleton that's found in West Africa. You guys want to know how old that was? Would you believe 13,000 years old? 13,000 years old. What about a canoe for navigating on the rivers? Did the savages in West Africa have that? I'll let either one of you talk to that because it's up here.
Well, the good thing about the means of transportation, like canoes and so on, if you study linguistics of the indigenous Nigerians, they had names for those things. Okay, and the complex linguistic system of the indigenous Nigerians they didn't borrow the names of canoes. They didn't borrow the names, so they had them. The names of hoes, of machetes. Axes. They had
stone axe heads.
Thank you. They had always been there.
Yes.
They're not borrowed technology.
Yes.
They're
And
not.
so I'm going to read this, Dr. Carey, just to buttress what you're saying, right? They said that they discovered this canoe it was discovered in 1987, right? It was in Yobe State. And they said that it dates the canoe to like 8,500 to 8,000 years old, right? And it is the oldest boat discovered in Africa and only the second oldest known worldwide. So back in the day, the Arabs weren't there. The Europeans weren't there. We were by ourselves. And guess what? We had our own canoes. Right?
Okay, just to add a bit to, I don't know if you've heard of the Nubians, the African, okay, I know it's far from Nigeria, but what I'm saying, the African culture, the indigenous African culture, devoid of Arabian influence, had great technology and traveled, like Ala-Igbo said, he said something about we had our language and culture were our borders, but we also had cross-cultural. Okay, there were wars, no doubt about that, but we also had trade, commonalities.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
After all, Australia were the miscreants that were sent away from Britain.
Sure.
The United Kingdom.
The thieves, robbers.
Yes.
And
then even the Americas, right? The Americas were those who were not of the aristocrat, and they were kind of sketchy, right? A lot of those that came here were sketchy.
Sure.
Right. So okay, let's talk about axe heads. Axe heads, because this is something that was like really important. And the Yorubas, the descendants of the Neolithic pioneers, were the ones that brought that. And that's what we use in opening the forest and going into agricultural development. Are you guys listening? We had agricultural developments before anybody showed up. Okay. So now that's just going to move on to, because we've got a few things to talk about. It's really exciting, right? Because we have a slave mentality, because we have been made to believe that everything advanced came to us. And it is important for us to tell the middle belters, the southeast, south, southwest, that no, you were front and center in the innovation and development of things before anybody came. Yep. Okay, this is all prehistory. We're talking about BC, right? We're talking way back in BC. So let's talk about the Nok culture and early Iron Age. Well, we've talked about bronze. We've talked about the stones, right, that we use. We've talked about the fact that we had canoes. Now, guess what? We have Iron Age. What? Are you sure? I thought the white men brought iron in the Iron Age. So let's talk about this, the Nok culture. And I see, Dr. Carey, you're chomping at the bit to talk about this. So go ahead, get us started. Dr.
Well, I the privilege of coming from other part of the culture and knowing the very town itself called Nok. It's actually a living town itself. And it's true that the Nok culture is one of the most sophisticated technologies and cultures, earlier civilization that have ever existed, as you can see from the date.
Yeah.
And the bronze head that was just recently returned, it was taken away from Nigeria to here, stolen. Look at that complexity. The
intricacy in it.
Yes. The nature of the land and the topography provided for that. If you go from there to, remember that if you go to Jos Plateau, for example, there is the iron, there is also the tin, tin mine. In fact, if you literally in the Middle Belt or any part in Middle Belt, you see during the rain season, once the rains are running, you will see signs of this iron or tin on the roadside. All right, when we're growing up. Okay, so they had been there. So the technology is quite intricate. If you look at I did a bit of studying of art. If you look at the way the measurement, okay, the lips and the eyes, that's a clear signs of technology and knowledge that they had learned over the years and transmitted.
Just open it, make it as bigger so people can see it easily.
Yes, there was fabrication of iron. They had their hoes, they had their bows and arrows, they had guns. Because guns have names in these indigenous languages.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
Right.
No, they had. They went into some of the trades, and some of the were like hunting expedition were done with guns and bows and arrows, and they have names in this. So the Nok culture, it's very, very sophisticated in terms of iron, in terms of also pottery, in terms of the molding and so on. It's quite sophisticated, and it dates back. Look at how old it is. It dates back to centuries.
Yes.
Ever BC.
5th century BC.
Yeah, BC.
Century BC. Look at the intricacy of this work.
Yes.
And I mean, like you would expect that since we were savages and didn't know how to do anything would be clunky. But look at the small
Decency.
Detail. Join us, please, Dr. Honorable Ogaraku. You can please join in this conversation because it's fascinating to see how brilliant the people in West Africa and in Nigeria really were and still are, as we see from around the world. And yet we have been saddled with this mentality that we have a small brain, that we can't do this, we can't do that, we can't be left on our own, right? And because we've been a peace-loving people, and we did not really, travel a lot in those days, we had no way of refuting that very topic that had us feeling inferior to Arabs, inferior to Asians, inferior to Europeans, inferior to everyone, when in fact, we were at the forefront of technology. So join us, Ogaraku, and share your thoughts with us, please.
Before I go to my thought, my question should have been, what was the interest of these invaders Europe to collect our artifacts? What were the interests?
Well, isn't that to say that we didn't have them, right? Because then if we can show these intricate objects, then it means that we're not savages. It means that we're not dumb, right?
The point I'm actually making is that they came in and saw some of these sophistications and wants to learn from it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great point, Honorable. That's a great point.
When they take it down there, they then study it and then start doing something. Let me give you a practical reaction to this. In the country where I live today, it is one of those countries that has survived a lot. They invaded all that, so there weren't much invasion on them. So you can still see the originality for almost 2,000 years ago now. Yeah. So if you go to some of the local communities, and they had what is called the artifacts, or what they call it, sanitary, what do you call it, the representation, the cultural representation, you will see that most of them are far less quality to compare to what we have here. There's no way you can compare what most of the things they use as the symbols of their, what do you call it, the fractions of the borough councils and all this or that to what we have here. So I believe when they saw the sophistications in Africa, first of all, is to key the history, key the history and of the people, but again, to learn from what they have done.
Yes.
I think this is exactly what happened.
Absolutely.
So
the way that I look at that, Honorable, and tell me if you agree, is that we have been divided from our culture and our brilliance, right? It's not just a division, a physical division, but it's also a division of our abilities. And telling us that we don't have those abilities, and the taking of these artifacts, help to prove that, right? Because if they don't exist, right, then it doesn't exist. But let's take a look. Let's take a look at how early how early these things, the knot, for it, that Dr. Carey loves so much, right? Yes. When they did the excavation in Kainji Dam, it revealed iron working 2nd century BC. Are you guys listening? 2nd century BC. And iron smelting, which they found in sites in Nsukka, which is in Igbo land in the southeast, is dating back to 2000 BC and to 750 BC at the site of OP. So it looked like what they're saying is that in West Africa, we jumped past the bronze and went to iron long before there was any white person or Arab in the area. So they're saying, the archaeologists are saying that the iron mythology was likely developed independently in sub-Saharan West Africa, independent of anyone's coming to tell us this is what to do. We were doing it. How do you react to that when we're told that we're savages and we have a small brain that can't hold anything, and yet we are either at the same time or before or slightly behind in different things, but with no other influence helping us to get there. Dr. Carey.
Yes, it's interesting to know that what happened was there were these movements in the West that try to distort our history. Invasion and distortion and theft are the three words you could use to explain the reason why they came up with that theory. But one of the things that they tried was to look at evolution. If you look at what has happened over the years, the theory of evolution that has been propagated, it made us to look that they were superior to the black race, and we didn't have any civilization. Sorry, there's a kind of so what? Sorry, I can hear. Okay, right. Thank you. So, hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah, hang on a second. We're getting some feedback. Just hang on a second. Okay, go ahead, please.
Right. So what they did was, the best way, they had to distort history using some theory. I mean, the propounders of evolution theory, for example, tried to do what we call superiority of races.
Yes.
So the Caucasian race and other races were seen to be superior, and therefore the technology was more advanced than the black technology. The Arab and they were busy, invading, looting. Of course, the Fulani as well. There is hardly any culture, any study of their advancement that you can talk of that is anything close to the Nok or Boku culture. Nothing, absolutely. So if anyone has, they stole, they distorted, and just in comparison, since this, it shows that we've been there for all these years, yes, without the invasion, without the colonization and so on. Absolutely. Imagine how our communities would have been so advanced by now.
Yes.
Right? But they had to come up with theories that will justify the invasion. And the theory of evolution is one of the most deadly theories that is being taught today without talking about its origin, its repercussion, the question of genes, and the question of superiority of genetic, and so on, which gave them, credence to superiority. The reason why there was slave trade, the reason why there's colonialism, is a question of the survival of the fittest,
right?
And so on. So that kind of clouded everything, and we in Africa, especially in Nigeria, borrowed the Western curriculum and taught over the years that, yes, this is what happened. Well, of course, we do have a history. I wouldn't want to call ours as prehistory. We had a history, all right?
Yeah.
And our history dates back to BC, before, long time ago. But they call it prehistory. I call it history.
Absolutely, prehistory. Yes, I love that, and they put that as prehistory. That was awesome. Yes,
it existed before evolution.
Yes.
You know, I don't know if you did study about Renaissance, about all this Reformation, even the question of world wars. There were European wars. There were not world wars. There were not. There were not world wars. There were European wars, but they imposed their mentality of the world was European. It had this European perspective, and therefore devoid of African excellent African technology. So that's why for all these years, and to be honest with you, maybe I'm jumping the gun. I don't know if you heard that the current government has tried to take away history from the curriculum in Nigeria.
Absolutely. No, they have. They took it away years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was taken away years ago. So people wouldn't understand what we're going to talk about next, Dr. Carey. We're going to talk about the Fulani Empire in Nigeria.
Thank you.
We're coming to the early days before 1500. As I was looking here on Wikipedia, I saw the Fulani Empire. I'm like, what? The Fulani Empire were there before 1500? But guess what you get when you click on the Fulani Empire?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't show, they were not in BC. They were not in early AD.
No.
They, the history said that they conquered the north, which does not include the middle belt, the far north, not the middle belt. They conquered in 1804. Did you get that? This is 1804. This is yesterday.
19th century.
Yes, yesterday.
As written as yesterday. You're right. Yeah.
And the question is then, who is allowing them to colonize West Africa, where they now have 4 presidents in West Africa, and they just arrived yesterday? And we're not going to answer that question because we know what the answer to that question is. Yeah. However, I'm going to go ahead and click on the Fulani Empire just so that those people will not tell me how that I am wrong, because this is the facts. The Sokoto Caliphate.
Yeah, it shouldn't be called
19th century.
It's not an empire, it's a caliphate.
It's a caliphate, it's not an empire. It's a caliphate.
Yeah, I think someone needs to edit this and put it a caliphate, not.
Well, they do have it here. They do have it here as a caliphate, but you know, Wikipedia sometimes they have this information. Yes, we do need to tell them that it's not an empire; it's a caliphate, right? It was colonization. That's what it is. And as other colonizers, colonists have been withdrawing, the Fulani should be withdrawing from North Africa because they're foreigners to the area, and they need to leave, right? Jamaica has you know, they're now removing the queen and et cetera, et cetera. So this needs to happen here, and it needs to be handed back to the houses that actually own the land, right? And I'm just talking about what's going on in the world today and what really should be happening, because that's what's happening around the world. But I just wanted to go over here to show that on here, it says the history before 1500, and somebody snuck in Fulani empire that didn't show up until the 19th century. But let's talk about the kingdoms and the empires that actually existed there, you know. And Ogaraku, you can join us at any time and really talk about this. And then we're going to talk a little bit, you know, just kind of go quickly through some of them, just because we want to kind of cover the area. We're trying to explain to indigenous Nigerians, all indigenous Nigerians, you have an incredibly rich history of being able to stand up against anyone. In fact, in a lot of things, you were doing things ahead of other people. You didn't just start in AD. You started BC. Unbelievable. This is very exciting because We've taken on this persona of the slaves, you know, the slave mentality. You know, the white man knows what he's talking about. Well, we know what we're talking about. And we've proven it in the world today. Go anywhere in the world today, look up Nigerians, and I'm talking about indigenous Nigerians, and see the exploits that they are doing. Because we're not savages. We're actually the most gentle of people, which even the white man, those from Britain, when they talked about the people in the area, they talked about how gentle we were, right? Because we're very gentle. And even when they came, you know, we didn't fight them, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, oh, you know, whatever, this people with the pale skin, fine, you know, we can live and let live. As long as they don't disturb what we're doing, we're cool, right? Because that's the way that they used to live it. But now it has turned into this slave mentality. Because I was looking at the other day where Catriona Liang came, the Ohanese Ndibo, which I know should be a different name, Ogarago, so don't correct me yet. Went to see her, right? And somebody asked the question, did, what's his name, Johnson, come and ask Ohanese Ndibo or anyone in Nigeria for any advice to leave when they were doing Brexit? Did they consult with us? So I thought that was an interesting question that was asked about that. But let's come back to our magnificent and illustrious history of being incredibly talented and brilliant, contrary to what we've been told and what we've been made to understand, that we were somehow subhumans, somehow illiterate, somehow unable to do anything with what was in our area, right? That's what we've been taught, and that's what we believe. And so we keep looking to the west, looking to the east, looking to the south, looking to the north, and not looking to our magnificent history. So let's talk about this. So Honorable, please, let's talk about some of the kingdoms. You can just name them, just so that a lot of the people can understand that they were already independent kingdoms and empires. The early independent kingdoms. This is it, independent kingdoms. So
that's the point. When we use the word kingdom, it means a lot. It means not just a name. Kingdom means people who have self-sufficiency within them. They have their boundaries, they have their military, they have their means of exchanges, economics, okay? And they existed without others. Hence, they use their powers either to influence others. But there are people identified. Do you remember that during the colonization, most of these kingdoms, either their leader were killed or taken to exile? Why? Yeah. Because the invaders knew they cannot get into these people without getting rid of their leaders.
Well, we see that happening today, right? They think
of doing these evil things, that they were able to kind of invade the people and divide the people. Yes, well sophisticated as they themselves invaders, a little more prepared, they study you and know what you have before coming. But however, the kingdoms, as you have the Bini kingdom, who was one of those strongest kingdom we have within the south that time, put it this way, without going by southeast or southwest.
Right, exactly.
Sophisticated and has a very strong leadership with a very long lineage, and has their own history kept secured. You can think of Bogu Kingdom, okay? So this is mostly, as we can say, even in the Middle Belt, they are known for a given aspect of technology or ways of life that is not influenced by others, okay? You go back, even those people who has not a pronounced kingdom still have their, because of the language homogenism, has also a way of commanding influence over themselves and then defending themselves over other forms of external aggression. Coming down to the south proper, where you have the Ibibios,
I'm just gonna have you talk about the Hausa kingdom, because they have been, there's this, you know, that false Hausa Fulani which doesn't exist, because the Hausa kingdom, and let's go there. I'm just gonna go there because it is important, to talk about, the Hausa kingdom. And so we're talking about, long time ago, before the Fulani came and started trying to ingratiate themselves into the society by saying that they are Hausa Fulani, which they are not, right? Okay, so let's talk about the Hausa kingdom, because that's important, because they are indigenous to the area.
Yes, as we can know, what we call the far north, northwest, and northeast today, we are mostly of the, though not necessarily, because we have a good number of other Kanuri, the Hausas, the Dr. Kari can say more about this.
Yes. Yeah, the Hausa history had, as you can see, the Hausa Bokwe and Banza Bokwe. The Hausa Bokwe was in like the Rakano, Zaria, Zazzau, where they were seen as perhaps you could say where they had one origin, like Ayajid Tawal, the others, Zampara, Kebi, and others were seen to be Banza Bokwe. I mean, they had the reason why they were calling them, which is it's a derogatory term anyway.
Yeah.
However, they had existed and had their system of administration. They had their chiefs. They had everything. And they were very good at trade and travel as well. And they were not colonizers. The Hausas were never colonizers. They were not invaders.
Mm-hmm.
They are tradespeople.
Yes.
They will come, for example, they will come and during the rainy season, if they move when it's dry season, they will move down to the middle belt where there are rivers. They would do some irrigation. So they were good at irrigation.
Yes, very good at irrigation. Very good, as we saw in Kano State, right?
Farming.
Yes.
Growing canals, channels, water.
Yeah.
We didn't have generators at that time to pump water. They knew how to create channels and how to fetch. And okay, they had
absolutely,
which when they came to they had no cattle. Their cattle will never eat your farm. They will not take your land. The Hausa man would never take your land.
Absolutely, will destroy your livelihood and your home and kill you.
No. On the contrary, they will beg you for the land to use. And when it's time, when the rainy season is over, the dry season is over, they will now go back to because the rainfall was very short.
Mm-hmm.
So they had a culture, they had a history, they had technology as well, all right, because they had tools and implements until the invasion from the Fulani, which completely obliterated everything, took away their system of administration, imposed a unitary system of government where you had the emir, a theocracy, where the emir had every say. You seem to be the next demigod, next to God.
Yes. Aristocracy now crept in.
Aristocracy and slavery became, So they now had what we call the talakawa. That's the poor, the peasant. Peasantry was created, it's a foreign thing to the House of people.
Yes.
Right? There were commonalities. There were commonalities. The Ogema peasantry is a term that was introduced, was alien to them. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, back to you, Honorable.
Yes,
because it's important. It really is important for all indigenous Nigerians to understand their history, right? Because this gives us a view to our future. Because our history is what led to the agreements that were made between 1960 and 1963 as how this area was going to be set up so that you had independent and autonomous regions that were self-governing. Go ahead, Ogorako. Keep going.
Yeah, you also talk of Borno Empire, which is supposed to be the Kanuri people.
Yeah.
And I think it's supposed to be Borno and beyond, Borno and down to where?
Here, right.
Today, where?
Kalemborno,
yeah.
Kalemborno.
Yeah. Kalemborno, but it's now covering how many states now? Borno is Borno and Taraba. What?
No, Taraba is different. Taraba is on the Korarafa. Yeah.
Yeah, over here.
Then Korarafa or Korarafa. Also, in fact, these people, units of people existing in different parts of what the geographical area today called Nigeria. And they were independent to some extent of their own, and they are identified by what they do, particularly among personally their culture and their language. Okay, and they coexisted, just like you rightly said. Most of them travels and goes to other people. They go in, they beg for existence, and then when it is time, they leave you with your things. Not invention, it's collaboration. Is a what do you call it? A relationship. Okay, you come to Nri Kingdom, which can be kingdom or the area, as the case may be. By history, it is said that they are descendants of the 12 tribes of Israel, as the case may be, and they came in as early as 600 BC, the case may be. So one of the oldest and by history, the longest serving indigenous people in the present day Nigeria. You talk of Ibibio people who are as well the other brothers of the same southeastern, them seen in the Calabar today. Then you go to Nupe. Nupe is in Middle Belt, okay? And there are people as well who are known for their culture in agriculture, as well as even in military manpower. This lasted for a very long time, even before the certain truncament of the existence of people here in Nigeria today. Or your empire is known to the world beyond any form of doubt, and it was big and large, and they had a lot of economy. That's where I think the capital of Oyo is supposed to be Ibadan, which is supposed to be even the capital of Western region, not even Lagos. Remember, which was a very important part of the geographical map, and the people are known for their technology, education, study. You talk of Songhai Empire, even Warrior Empire, which coexisted with the Benin Empire. You lay it as well in the west, and the Yaba East Kingdom. There are this existence. This is exactly where the line, what we may call the line of state, supposed to have followed if things were done right. However, the idea of the subdivision of Nigeria, which was not done with the consent of the people, gave us something different. That's where we are today, unfortunately.
Okay, awesome. I mean, this is like really important. Again, it's important because we we supposedly gained our independence, but unfortunately, we find ourselves still being colonized, and in not a good way. We have an invasion that is ongoing, a war. There's a war that is ongoing right now by the invaders that invaded the far north of Nigeria. And so we have to let our people understand who they are. So calling all indigenous of Nigeria, we're trying to let you know that you are not savages. You're not illiterate. You don't have a small brain or any of those things. You stand toe to toe, shoulder to shoulder with any civilization on this earth. The color of your skin did not render you to be subservient. It did not render you to be less talented. It did not render you to not have the brain capacity to do things. And you have proven, archaeologically, it has been proven. And with what's going on in present day, with the achievement of people from West Africa, and especially Nigeria, and I'm talking about the indigenous Nigerians. When you look at the achievement, it tells you that you are a great people. You are a great people. You are a gentle people. You are people that actually understand what democracy actually means. You understand what it means to live at peace with your neighbors. That's who you are. Brilliant, innovative, compassionate. That's who we are. And so now let's talk about knowing this. Let's come to our present and what's going on and how that differs significantly from the narrative that is being talked about today and the narrative that our people need to let go of so that they can see their future. So I'm going to come to you, Dr. Carey.
Right.
Let's talk about one Nigeria.
Yeah.
You know, we hear Fiona Liang. Oh, so happy that Ohanes and Igbo are committed to unity. But let's define that unity. Can you help us?
Yeah, one Nigeria, I think it's a figment of some people's imagination. That concept of one Nigeria, indivisible, that the unity of one Nigeria cannot be
indissoluble.
Yes, it's not. It's not. Yeah, I mean, all those terminologies are military terminologies. I think it's being used in so-called civilian era culture.
Exactly.
It's a caliphate. They have their mental. They know what they want, and that's the model they want. A unitary, so-called unified system that does not give freedom to independent kingdoms and independent indigenous Nigerians. It doesn't allow for independent growth, inclusiveness. Doesn't allow also for independent development. It's a unity that's been forced on the people. It's an imposition, which is not even practiced in the so-called civilized world, for example.
I would use a word more than imposition at this point. Yeah, so we need to call it what it is, because it's not an imposition. Because right now we're facing an existential threat.
It is an existential threat. It's not only been conquered, but it's an existential threat that is, and it's
trying to conquer the rest of us.
Yes,
which they shall fail in.
In their mind, they have conquered.
Yes,
but we know that we have to fight. Yeah, so because when you occupy, you see what they have done. When you occupy the political terrain, you hold the power. And also, if you look at the economic bloc as well, and the judiciary, and the military, when you control those, as far as they're concerned, they have conquered. That's what they believe. But you and I know that they have, and they're trying to see that they can. So, but what indigenous Nigerians must rise up is to be free from this invasion, this mentality of control from the caliphate. And unless and I tell you what, just like I've said since we started Ninas, I joined Ninas, I want to say that there is no freedom that does not come with a price. And one of them is what we do now, knowledge, giving people knowledge to understand that you need to be independent of this so-called unitary or unified country. We need to be free from it so that we can grow. Some people are bent on imposing and colonizing, both using ethnicity and religion, the rest of the indigenous Nigerians, what is alien to us. In that jinx, that control has to be broken, that yoke, or what I may call the yoke, we use shackles, okay?
Shackles. Shackles. We need to break those shackles.
We need to break the shackles, which is quite akin to what happened in apartheid regime, where you had an exclusive control, a minority ruling majority. That's exactly what is happening here. Not only
let us make sure that we know that these are the Johnny Just Comes. They came in the Johnny Just Comes. They have not been here since BC.
No, they haven't.
Early AD. They just arrived. These are foreigners who are invading. Because I heard, I don't remember the name of the guy at the UK Parliament, I believe, saying that the problem of Nigeria is corruption. It is corruption. It cannot be called colonization, he said, because it is the people within Nigeria. I'm like, does he know history?
No, he doesn't.
Do he know history?
Either he's ignorant or he's playing the script of the,
Yes.
Because they're co-colonizers, aren't they?
Exactly.
ignorance, or he's actually playing a script.
Very disingenuous.
Yeah.
Okay. You see, the case of Nigeria, I think in different circles, in different forums, which have been analyzed, the issue is implementation. Okay. I think people knew the call it secret agenda, as the case may be, as maybe. So, but what I want to say here is that the worst thing you can do in this world is to win an ignorant person in argument. And that an ignorant person won in argument does not mean that he is right, he or she is right. It simply means that a civilized person doesn't want to waste time in discussion, but make a point. And he who cannot align to spurious argument is not worth to live with, put it this way, or engage in argument with. I think this is what is happening in with the so-called Fulanis, who find themselves in different places in Africa, and then their interest, no matter their number, is to conquer. And because we are democratic people, when you get in there, everybody wants to get there, instead of maybe trying to work together. It's not wrong, honestly, it's not wrong. I've always said this, that if one goes to the market and buy a ram, and at the end of the day, the ram doesn't have some odors in it, then what makes it that? Okay, so everything has something that it should be known for. Okay, so our people has our own culture, academic, educational culture, administrative culture, mentality, human respect, and rule of law. Then we, for one reason or the other, join with people who doesn't have this as a value. Where killing is in fact, some valuable things, and the respect of human life is not worth nothing to them. And then they talk of this communal arrangement where instead of being democratic, you listen to what maybe one aristocratic leader has told you to do. So whoever gets in there automatically becomes a slave to such an idea. So while we are here trying to develop ourselves, just like we said, anybody can come from nowhere and become anything. Over there, they have established a line where they have an idea to go. And whoever finds himself, or because everybody who must be somebody is coming from a certain background. So but that background has that story already in them, they're working on it. So the idea of invading our military or our defense, invading our economy, invading our judiciary, invading, so supposed not to be a civil approach. It's not as if to say others are fools. But anytime you think of this, it's a matter of one, demonstrating his idiosyncrasy, which is trying to take us an advantage. But people are not fools, and they cannot go too long. So what I'm trying to say is that Nigerians should wake up and learn to work together, mostly the Southerns and Middle Belt, knowing fully well that there's this call it mentality approach by this particular group of people. It seems they are winning, but there's no, it is said, anytime you wake up is your morning. Yeah. If Nigerians should wake up today and know that we have this threat within us, I think that will help us, because we still have the number. They in no way outnumber us, even in the so-called North. If their conscience are called to order, they still outnumber the so-called Fulanis, put it this way. I mean, they call North as well, because Hausas still has their numbers. Not to talk of going by the Middle Belt and down there. They don't have the numbers, so why should they control us? So let's wake up and get something done. Absolutely. It's time, it's long, this suffering has been long enough, and I think it should stop now. Nigerians should wake up and take over their battle in their hand. Thank you, and God bless.
Okay, so we've talked about the fact that we've been, we're divided into different countries, because if you look, you see Yorubas in lots of different countries, you see, Igbos in lots of different countries. But let's give an example of the division, right? We've already talked about, if you see the map, which way do I turn? The map behind me. If you see the caliphate, the Fulani caliphate, once they had the military intervention that hijacked the sovereignty of the nations, they immediately started dividing those nations that you see on your left, immediately dividing them into smaller chunks. So I'm going to have Ogarafa give them an example of what they did to the Igbos. where the Igbos find themselves, Ogorako, in this whole division. And remember, folks, the reason we're talking about this is that their goal was to divide and conquer. Because if you divide those nations into smaller chunks and put a governor, all of a sudden, a united people don't have a single leader that is talking for them. They have governors that are competing. Now, if you go further, as Ogorako is going to show us, and I put people in different places from where they are, scattering them, you now create some more havoc. Go ahead, Ogorako, talk to us about what has happened to the Igbo, and then we'll look at a map, actually a table that showed what happened to the Yoruba. But go ahead, Ogorako, tell us.
Okay, before I get down to what happens to the Igbos, including other regions, if you look at the map there, you can see how green is forming almost 70% of the whole map. However, in this green, you know too that the middle belt is almost more than half of that.
Absolutely.
And why should they be in green and then called north? And I want to tell you that part of Igbos are in these areas you call green today. What makes them not? Let's come down there. Yeah. What makes them not? You can open it widely here now.
Yeah, I'm going to.
Does it mean Igbos, first of all, remember this idea of the 12 states was created during or some few days to the Civil War, remember? And the Igbos were not in the circle where these divisions were made. So, and our people used to say, whoever is not there, he's a what do you call it? He's a palm burns in the fire. So they balkanized us the way they want. They would, in order to attempt to reduce the Igbos to almost no, and don't even no space, they make sure that a good part of them are taken to what we call different Midwest, then Midwest, and then later to what do you call it? The South, how is it called? Calabar, Goja, Calabar, and all this other.
River.
And then they make sure that the Igbo look at it green. Yes. See, they make sure that the Igbos that doesn't even have access to the water. All these things are criminal intent. I want to let you know.
What about Benue? Remember, there's Igbos in Benue.
Yeah, I'm coming to that. I want to let you know that greater percentage of what we call today River State are Igbos. Greater percentage. When I say greater, up to 70% and more of what today is called River State are Igbos. Good part of Calabar are Igbos. Even the word Ibibio means Igbos. Yes. To some extent. So we have Igbos in Bayelsa State, we have Igbos in River State, we have Igbos in Cross River State, we have Igbos in Akwa Ibom State, we have Igbos, almost 70% of Igbos of Delta State are Igbos.
Yes.
We have few Igbos even in Delta State. Mm-hmm. We have Igbos in Kogi State.
Yes.
We have Igbos in Benue State. Yeah. I want to tell you that we have Igbos in 11 states of Nigeria. And then while we have these fractions of Igbos in all these, forming the minorities in all these states, mm-hmm. the so-called North are there from far north trying to claim even Benue, Kogi, and all those areas that are bounded with, as if to say they are not. What form of invasion is that? So I want to call our attention to this fact that if Igbos are to claim their right to territorial environment, they are not as small as anybody may try to imagine. This is not exactly our map. This is not exactly our territory. This is not exactly our number. Our number are far beyond that. Yes. They talk of Igbos in diaspora. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And again, folks, this is incredibly important what we're talking about. It is very important for us to understand who we were, because that's who we are. Because as we chat our way to the future, we need to be able to be clear, very clear on what we're talking about and what we're asking for, okay? It is very important because that's the way that when we're talking, we can point to independent sources will point to independent sources that shows exactly what we're talking about. Okay, so no one can stand up. No one in the Western world, in Asia, no matter where you are, you cannot stand up and say, oh, well, you know, we brought them democracy. No, you didn't. They can't say, oh, well, you know, we brought them the Bronze Age and the Metal Age. No, you didn't. You can't say, well, we taught them how to be kingdoms and nations. Not true again. My people, we had all of this early BC. That's before Christ. You are a highly talented, highly intelligent, highly developed people from the north of the Hausas down to the south and across Africa. And it's time to shed it. That slave mentality, that these people are coming with things that are better than us. And next week, we're going to be talking about the achievement of people from the indigenous people of Nigeria, which does not include the Fulani, by the way. Does not include them. They only came in the 18th century. They were not there BC or early AD. As we say in Nigeria, that their journey just comes. And so you ask the question, because we're peace-loving, because we're accommodating. We've let them be presidents in West Africa, and look at what we're getting. And I'm going to show some headlines about what the Fulanese are doing in West Africa, because this is not just a Nigeria problem. And I am again going to call on the United States, the United Kingdom, the European Council, the United Nations, NATO, all of you out there. Do you want us to believe that as highly intelligent as you are, as the intelligence that you have, that you want everyone to believe that what's going on in Nigeria is herder-farmer conflict when the herders are criminals and terrorists? Come on. That just shows stupidity. I'm sorry. It shows stupidity. If you want anyone to believe that. It shows stupidity. Plain ass stupidity. Because you know that's not the case. You know there's an invasion. But next week, we'll be talking about accomplishments. But for right now, let's talk about the division of the Yoruba people. And then we're going to be ending fairly soon. But this is highly important, people. Share this video so people can go to the link, look it up themselves, and understand what a great people. We are a great people. We are a blessed people. We are a people that are industrious. We're innovators. We're engineers. We're doctors. We're rocket scientists. And we can stand toe to toe with anyone from any nation, be it white, black, yellow, red, whatever. We can stand toe to toe and have done it and will continue to do it. Let's look at the Yoruba Kingdom.
I want to add, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
With the vigor with which the West and America are supporting the invasion in Ukraine, they should know that it's not different from what we are suffering in Nigeria. I also saw the Secretary of the United Nations visiting Nigeria and a kind of softening the situation instead of taking it with the vigor it is. That is
he is supposed to be supporting the indigenous nation.
Unacceptable. And I want to set here that the people he was talking to, claiming to think he's talking to indigenous people, are not indigenous people. By their dress and their attire, they are not indigenous. And I'm going to go ahead and show some headlines. If we are not indigenous to our own people, we are not doing good to the situation. The people in the, what do you call it, IDPs, you know them, we know them, and they know where they are coming from. Just give them opportunity to relocate to their places and get back to their places. That's exactly what we expect people like that, people in that position of a Secretary of the United Nations and his institution to do. not to come and preach to us reintegration. Reintegration who? They should tell us how they've reintegrated the terrorists in their different countries for us to learn from there, not to teach us.
Exactly. And while they're at it, they should explain Afghanistan because they did an integration there and we saw how that went. And those guys they were not foreigners. Okay. There's Benin Republic. This is a year ago that banned Fulani herdsmen from entering their country. We're not talking about an isolated event, Antonio Guterres, Secretary Blinken. We're not talking about an isolated event. We're talking about a menace. We're talking about criminals and terrorists destabilizing West Africa. This is who you're supporting. Terrorists. And those cows, those are Trojan cows. For all of you that don't know the Trojan horses, these are Trojan cows. These are Trojan cows. This is their lead army. This is how they entered. It's with the lead army. And now we have human beings being killed so that cows would live. Antonio Guterres, we're calling on you to retract that statement and to do your job. You have a responsibility, actual responsibility, being in charge of the group setup to uphold the sovereignty of indigenous people. You, as you have seen us show you over and over again, indigenous nations were in Nigeria long before. But most recently in 1963, that's the agreement supporting a military hijacking of the sovereignty of these nations that were self-governing and autonomous. It's atrocious. And then to suggest that we bring terrorists to be citizens, Fulani terrorists to be citizens in our country, which is Ruga, R-U-G-A. The Bala Muhammad went on television to tell everyone that they were implementing, even though the country said no. In there, he made it clear. He made a call to all Fulani from around Africa to come into Nigeria. What about the Yorubas, Antonio Guterres? They've been carved out of Nigeria. Why didn't the Buhari government have a Ruga for the Yorubas? A Ruga for the Igbos? Because you do know Igbos are in the Cameroons and in surrounding areas around Nigeria, right? That's a known fact. Why is it that it's only the Fulanese that are getting free citizenship, free land, other people's land, by the way, for free, free jobs, and on top of every revenue producing, and we're not going to go into that today, every revenue producing area? The Western world is not this dumb. I'm sorry.
And I want to add, that's exactly what I wanted to say before. They should not come all the way from there to tell us how what do you call it? Gaddafi is brutalizing us and Saddam Hussein is brutalizing his people. While what is happening in Nigeria today, they could not see that.
It's worse. The UN gave us numbers, right? 350, it said. 350,000 being killed. And this was last year, guys. So that number obviously is much higher. But this is the UN's own number. Antonio Guterres, your own people. Okay? The International Criminal Court made it clear. The Nigerian armed forces are engaging in acts against humanity that rises to the level of war crimes that should be investigated. It was in 2020. What have you done to investigate? So again, this here presentation is going sideways. I'm going to bring it back. Let's bring it back to the fact that we're a great people, indigenous Nigerians. You are fearfully and wonderfully made with excellent brains. You're innovators. You stand head and shoulders above a lot of people in this world. And know the things that you achieved, what you did not achieve because other people came in to give it to you. And that's why we're asking everyone to look at that Wikipedia page so that you can see just a fraction of the things that you have accomplished. Just because it hasn't been archaeologically worked yet. See, the things that came up in 1987 showed that all the stuff that you have been told, that your brain is small, that you can't retain information, blah, 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 is a lie. It's a lie. It's a lie, yo. Make una no believe that nonsense. Make una stop the belief of that nonsense. Say una be slave. Una no be slave. Oh. You are the head and not the tail. Okay, now I've started going to the Bible. Okay, so this is talking about division. We have been divided from our history and made to believe that we were less than. We have been divided into different countries and made to believe that we can't. We have been divided into different states and made to compete with each other so that we don't supposedly see the fact that we're being invaded. Come on now. We are much smarter than that. And Western world, free world, communist world, every world, you are much, much smarter than that. So CNN, ABC, BBC, Al Jazeera English, Wall Street Journal, all the major newspapers and reporters around the world, shame on you. That you're supporting the massacre of the rightful landowners, the lawful landowners, and just passing it off as herder-farmer conflict where these herders are foreigners and don't have any rights to the land. Come on now. So my people, know who you are so you can see your future and get your sovereign nations back. And I say this, and I'm going to say it. Every single Black nation must make sure that it changes its constitution to see that only its true indigenous people rise to the levels of power in their country, because while we are not invaders, there are others who want to come and colonize us and invade us.
Recolonization.
And China, you think by giving loans, you can start taking over national interests? How did you feel? How would you feel if that happened to you? Stop it. We've got young ones coming up, and they will get to see this history and know it and look out. There is a mutuality of interest where we can coexist, where you can pay fairly for the things that you are stealing right now. Yes, it is theft. So that it benefits everyone and not just you. So you're developing, and I'm not just talking to China now, I'm talking to all the Western countries right now. You have developed your countries on our blood, on our resources that you have taken from us, unfairly, uncompensated. Oh, it's corruption. You're the corruptors. Do you not accept the money in your countries? Don't you know where that money comes from? Don't you see the 102 million that are starving in Nigeria alone? Please, let's stop the charades. Let's stop the stupidity. We're not stupid. We're calling you on it. We might be a small show, but make no mistake about it. There will be more of us. Our young ones are coming. They can't kill them all. They can't kill even a heck of a lot of them. I know they're trying to starve them to death, but we're going to change that. You are going to help to change that. Don't let history show you as barbarians and murderers in the horrific way by starvation, the type of barbaric activity that's going on by these invaders. History will not judge you kindly, and your future generation will pay for it. Because trust me, there is a God. He's not asleep. And karma, it's not as benevolent as the gods. She's a bitch. Thank you all very much. So we're going to invite all of you to please watch this video. Go out there and ask the question. This is the internet age. Find out who you are, who you truly are, so you can see who your future is. You did not vote in a referendum for a unitary Nigeria that is falsely called the Federal Republic. Okay? UK, Europe, US. Can you show us the nations in Nigeria that make up this Federal Republic of Nigeria? I think we have shown you that those states are not independent. They're not self-governing. They're not autonomous, meaning they have no sovereignty. They have no control over their own assets, over their borders. They're pretty much just stooges of the middle. And now they put in an amendment to make the local government report to the federal government, controlled by the Fulani. We didn't do it. And we're demanding our rightful sovereign nations back. So again, we'll be here next week talking about the achievements. I did not want to talk about what's going on in Sokoto today, because a few days ago, a young Christian lady was burned to death. We still don't know what the true story is behind that, but we have seen a lot of people that we could consider moderate, not like, they're not terrorists, but acting in a terrorist manner. And so Antonio Guterres, no thank you. We don't want terrorists integrated. They're not being reintegrated. These are not people from Nigeria. These are Fulani invaders. When you allow them into your country and integrate them into Europe, Asia, wherever you want to integrate them, and it works, we still won't do it. We have history with them. We still won't do it. Because our people don't want people that don't know how to live at peace. So I'm going to leave you with this picture again. Okay, I'm going to leave you with this picture again that talks about what's going on in West Africa with these Fulani as they go around destabilizing, invading, killing, murdering, and it being called herder-farmer conflict. We need to kind of be done with that. So thank you again. Thank you, Ogarako. Thank you, Dr. Carey, for a very informative session and for the passion that you showed as we went through this. So thank you all again and have a great weekend. We'll see you back here next week. Same time, every Saturday at 7 p.m. Nigeria time, It's 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, and 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. God bless and have a great weekend.